Hello, people. Welcome to the Guilty as Charged live Q&A. I'm Maddie Schmidt, super excited to be here, and I'm joined by Alex and Tyler today. Unfortunately, Steven couldn't make it this morning, but it's okay. We've got you guys covered. How are y'all today?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?
I'm good. What about you, Alex?
I'm doing good. I was gonna say before you said Steven was out, I was gonna be like, wait, Steven looks a little different today. He doesn't usually look like that, but no, Steven's out of town, so we're handling the Q&A.
Yep, not Steven. Sorry to disappoint.
No, not at all. By the way, everyone, Maddie's been crushing it this week. I talked about her interview with Trevor Sikkema, which you guys have already watched, which is great. A little bit of insider information for somebody else. More interviews on the way and all that good stuff. So happy to have you here, Maddie, to do this Q&A for us.
Well, I'm happy to be here. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Feel free to go ahead, put all your Chargers related questions in the chat, and we'll get to them today. But first, you guys ready to jump in?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, we're going to start with some Patreon questions. So Andrew Romano wants to know, what kind of compensation can we get if we trade back out of the 17 spot for moving back 3, 5, or 5+ spots?
Okay, so I was a total dork. I made an entire video way ahead of time for this, and I will never go over it because I hate it. But I do have options for everyone to see visually on the screen because I'm a nerd. So you can trade. I'll just kind of give you the skinny on the whole thing. So you can trade back 3 spots with the Steelers, who might want a quarterback. If you trade back 3 spots in the first round, you can kind of flip your 4th rounder into a 3rd rounder, move up about 40 spots. You could trade back with the Saints, but I didn't want to include that because now they have Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston, so not going to happen. You could trade back 15 spots with the Lions, and you can basically get 2 third-round picks, which I think the Lions could do because they could keep the 34th overall pick, and that would just let them, almost have a first-round pick, still get somebody, a pretty good value. The difference between 32 for them and 34 isn't all that much, so they get to have a really, really good pick at 17. They just give up 2 third-rounders. I think they'd be okay with that. And then finally, if you want to, I don't think they'll do this, but if the Chiefs want to dance with the devil, if the Chiefs want to go ahead and help out their guy, you could trade back, swap thirds, and get the 50th overall pick in the 2nd round. So that's a video that I will never share because I did it, and sometimes I do them, and I just not going to do it. But the information is there. Yeah, thank you.
Alex, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, Tyler consulted the nerd chart, and the nerd chart spoke these values into him. So, I mean, it's very good that he made that PowerPoint. And, I mean, I think it makes sense to trade back given the value. And, the Lions one kind of wouldn't surprise me if they want to go up and grab a quarterback and still maintain all that draft capital plus their 2nd round pick.
Where's your PowerPoint?
I didn't bring one today. Didn't bring one today. That's just Tyler's thing. I don't do PowerPoints.
It's okay. We'll forgive you this time. Yeah, I'd be
Okay.
surprised if something happened with the Chiefs trading there. Don't see that happening. Another Patreon question, Bill Breland. If we stay at 17, would you rather add a defensive piece like McDuffie or give Herbert a weapon like Williams or Olave? Assume that we addressed right tackle at some point in this free agency.
Alex, go for it. You can do your presentation if you want.
Yeah, I mean, if people know what my answer is, it's offense. I mean, this is kind of a version of like the Jamar Chase, Penei Sewell discussion, but I mean, really, the Chargers addressed defense really heavily in free agency. If they didn't go get J.C. Jackson, and if they didn't address their needs, then I think this would be a pretty open and shut case to go get a corner, to go get a McDuffie or Booth. But this is an offensive league, and you could see just the difference that one offensive player makes in Jamar Chase for the Bengals. And, I'm not saying Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson is that, but adding that to Keenan Allen and Mike Williams in an offensive league is just, I don't think you could pass that up. Or Jameson Williams if he is there.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. If, like the question says, we address right tackle at some point in free agency, then sure, go for it with wide receiver. But I just don't see them addressing in a legitimate way the right tackle position this offseason. So I think we're kind of stuck with whoever's there with Trevor Penning. And to be completely honest, considering, Rashawn Slater worked heavily with Duke Manyweather, the Chargers are probably bringing back Ode Abuji, who worked with Duke Manyweather. Trey Pipkins is now working with Duke Manyweather. Trevor Penning is a Duke Manyweather guy, and I think the Chargers appreciate his input and really trust him to develop and work with their linemen. So I do think if Penning is there, and if Duke Manyweather says, hey, I give this guy my stamp of approval, and he already has, and then obviously to switch from left tackle to right tackle, I do think Penning is the pick, and I think Duke Manyweather's contribution to that discussion is going to mean a lot.
So let's say the Chargers do address the right tackle issue this free agency, which I personally don't see happening at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you guys think would come to LA?
I mean, everyone's put in Chris Olave as the favorite at this point. I don't blame them for doing that. I don't know. I just feel like with the investment in Josh Palmer and sort of how they feel about Jalen Guyton, and they're going to have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams for the next 3 years. I don't know if they'll actually invest a first rounder in a wide receiver or a speedy deep threat sort of guy. We've all been saying it. We've all been fans for years, and we say, hey, let's get this receiver. Let's get this receiver. Let's get this receiver. And they never have. Like, we always assume they're going to go after this prototype that we want, but they never do. So to me, I think it could actually just be a surprise pick. It could even be a guard. It could be Davis. It could be I think everyone wants receiver, but I don't know if the Chargers feel that they need one.
Yeah, I also don't know if it has to be like a position-based thing. I mean, the way that Telesco's worked in the draft, he's kind of ignored analytics to some degree and been like, I want to go get Melvin Gordon and Kenneth Murray in the first round, which have worked to varying degrees. But he'll do that and go get his player regardless of the position. So if they do fill out right tackle and then you're stuck there with wide receiver, corner, I think he just takes BPA at that point, which is kind of what he did prior to the Slater draft, although Slater was both BPA and obviously their biggest need at the time. But I do think he'll probably lean heavily BPA if they do get the right tackle.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree with Alex there. It's going to be best player available.
Mm-hmm.
A couple more questions from Patreon before we move into the chat. Riley Williams says, Merriman hinted at another big signing. What do you think happens here? And separately, what would you guys want to happen?
It's so tough with Merriman because you hear some of these former Chargers guys and former Chargers defenders say, hey, I heard this person is coming here. Alex, we know about Fletcher Cox, and Sean Phillips said, hey,
right.
Oh, I heard he's going to come to the Chargers. And it just never happened. Although I think the Eagles basically prevented that from happening.
Yeah.
So Merriman saying that the Chargers are 100% going to make another big move. It's possible. I just don't know if I buy it. And the name that I got was Stephon Gilmore. But like I explained in the video that I made, I don't buy that happening. I asked Arjun, like, what percentage would you give this? He said 5%. And so to me, it's like, it's possible, I guess, but I really don't see it happening. So what would I want to happen? So what do I think happens? I think nothing happens. I'll be honest. I think nothing happens in terms of a big name. What would I want to happen? Edge 3, but I was talking to Gavino about this yesterday in our live stream. There's just nobody left. Like, I would like them to get a veteran. It's not going to be a big move, but I'd like to get some sort of veteran because they don't have anything. I don't believe in Chris Rumph to be an edge 3 right now. And that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking me what I would want, I would go with Tyrann Mathieu. I mean, if the value does drop so much to the point where you can get him on a relatively cheap deal compared to where people thought he would be before free agency, I think that's the move. As far as believing Sean Merriman, I feel like if he had a real report, he would put it on Twitter and not TikTok. But that's just kind of me, in terms of breaking news and getting all that engagement. So I sort of think nothing happens as well, although, you never know who's connected and who's not. But yeah, no, I would like to see it if there is a big move be Tyrann Mathieu or someone like that. Although I think Merriman gave himself a lot of like, if something does happen and it's a lot smaller than anticipated, he was like, it's not going to be as big as Khalil Mack. So he gave himself a little bit of margin for error there, which is kind of a qualifier. But no, I'd like to see some investment in the secondary, whether that was Gilmore or Mathieu.
All right. Plie Trap, excuse me if I mispronounced your first name there, but he wants to know, if we drafted Zion Johnson at 17, what would that mean for right tackle?
Alex, you say it first because I don't want to say it and admit what happens.
What do you want me to say?
I assume we would be on the same page. What do you think happens at right tackle?
If they put Zion Johnson, I mean,
do it.
Probably Filer, I guess at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what kind of Popper's insinuated. I mean, or we're just circling the drain with Norton and Pipkins. That's the other alternative. But that's what I think happens at right tackle. I think if they really invest in guard seriously in the draft, then they probably make that switch. But yeah, no, I don't think it's going to happen just because I do think they'll probably get like I don't think they're going to go guard in the first round.
I don't think so either. Obviously, we'll see, and that could just be the hole that they're missing. For some reason I read this question as like, okay, if Ode Abushi's not back and they draft Zion Johnson, what do they do at right tackle? But I guess you're right. Like they could put Zion Johnson at left guard, Filer at right tackle, Abushi at right guard.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible. I just don't see it happening. I really think that we're trying to put these pieces together for Matt Filer to move to right tackle. Again, like, oh, that makes sense to us, but I don't really think it makes sense to the Chargers. And I don't buy that they would actually do it.
Yeah.
That's about it for Patreon questions now. So we're going to move right on over to the chat. First off, shout out to Supercharger 2197 for your Khalil Mack jersey arriving. I'm quite jealous. All right. Do you guys buy Cross falling past Penning to us? Seems trending that way, according to CCX3.
No. I think it's possible and anything can happen, you know, with the amount of smoke screens there. But that feels like a play for a team that's like between 14 and 20 who wants Cross to fall to them, whether that's the Chargers or another team in that range. But I just think that Cross is like the way better built tackle ready to play now. I think me and Steven both had him at number 1 or something along those lines when we did our offensive tackle rankings. So for me, I don't buy him falling past Penning, although I guess anything's possible.
I guess it could depend on. I don't think Cross is going to fall to the Chargers. I could see Penning going before him if teams really value what he does in the run game over what Cross does. Let's say it's the Ravens, and they're like, we're just going to run the crap out of the football. They might like Penning over Cross, who's going to be more of a pass pro guy, but still, like Cross is at worst the third best tackle, and I just don't buy that he's going to fall past Penning and to the Chargers, even if it's trending that way. I just don't see it happening. The class, like even if he was the 4th best tackle, I think somebody's going to reach for Cross because after that, it's a real dumpster fire.
Yeah, I also would be pretty surprised unless something crazy happens in the next couple weeks. I don't see that happening.
Right.
All right. Shout out to Envy Talent for the donation. We appreciate your support so much. So he's got a general question for us. How do you guys feel about the new postseason rules? Well, I'm a fan, to be honest.
Why?
Well, it's just, I don't want to say it's not fair, but it's not fair. And it was just so evident this last playoffs with the Bills and stuff. It wasn't right. And I think they made the right call here.
I'm conflicted on this one. I like the new postseason rules, and I think it favors offense. So obviously getting to see Josh Allen play Patrick Mahomes is what everyone else wants. But I do think it's kind of funny that we're like, oh, Josh Allen didn't get to take the field. And then the next week, everyone was just like, oh, the Bengals are screwed because they didn't win the coin toss. And then they played defense and won. Right. Like, so I don't know. There's part of the competition aspect for me where I think we're kind of favoring the offenses and the quarterbacks in overtime, and the defenses are sort of getting left out to dry. But I get why they made the rule change. I don't mind it as much. It probably will result in some longer games and more interesting calculations of teams when they want to go for 2 to potentially end the game or not. But I do think the discussion of it is kind of funny when we've seen a few instances of teams winning in overtime when they didn't get the ball first.
So the rules, each team gets a possession in the postseason, but what happens if they both score? You just keep going?
Yes, unless they get the 2-point conversion. If they get the 2-point conversion, then the game is over, I think, on the first possession.
Right. I think some of the math junkies said that going for 2 on that first touchdown is not like what you should be doing, at least mathematically. Yeah. So Staley certainly would. I just don't know.
Probably. Oh, I mean, we're definitely going to be in some situations where the Chargers get the ball first in overtime, and then we're all like, is he going to go for 2 or not? But yeah, that's going to be interesting to watch when it does happen.
All right, moving right along. What are y'all's thoughts on Kayvon Thibodeau's stock taking a hit recently?
I mean, not to be this guy, but it sounds like high athletic, just there's always one black athlete who gets this every draft, it seems. Last year, it was Justin Fields. This time it's Kayvon Thibodeau. Guys are just getting pushed down because of a character, mental drive, love for the game sort of thing that is not even kind of evident on tape. So to me, the stock taking a hit thing, I don't buy. I don't buy that he's going to go after Trayvon Walker.
Yeah, I don't buy that he's going to go after Trayvon Walker either. And I'll also, everything that you hear about the draft is smokescreen season to me. Like, there's going to be a GM who's like, well, I want Kayvon Thibodeau at 6 or 7, so I'm going to hope he falls a little bit further. I also do think there's just part of draft media that kind of gets bored with this stuff and likes to make up narratives. By the time we're in April around the draft, I don't buy any of like the character concerns or off the field stuff. I think aside from Aiden Hutchinson, he's the best edge in this class. And a team would be really foolish to pass on him.
Completely agree. I wouldn't read too much into that. Kayvon Thibodeau is going to be just fine in the draft. All right. Jason A wants to know y'all's thoughts on Barnett.
Didn't he resign with the Eagles?
Yeah, Derek Barnett. Yeah, there's been a couple people that have like tweeted me about Derek Barnett, and I'm like, he resigned with the Eagles, and I've had to do it a couple times. But yeah, no, he's not currently a free agent anymore, so I don't have any thoughts on him.
All right, let's move on. Original One says, he says cornerback Kyle Fuller in vet OT and vet edge. So I'm guessing, what are our thoughts on Kyle Fuller here?
I have no strong feelings on Kyle Fuller. The Chargers do need another corner in their room. So adding Kyle Fuller, it's all fine by me. Vet offensive tackle and vet edge. That sounds good to me. The Chargers having holes on their roster and then just filling them sounds great. Whether they do or not, I don't know. I honestly think they're done. I think there's, of those three, maybe not Kyle Fuller, but a corner, I think there's one more move, but I don't think all three are going to happen.
No, I don't think all three are going to happen either. And Kyle Fuller is an interesting guy because he does sort of have like the Staley connections a little bit. And the Chargers were, previously kind of going after him before the Broncos got him last year. I think out of those three, the vet OT is probably the most likely. I don't think vet edge is likely at all. I mean, they could get a guy who's going to be in the vein of blanking on his name right now. Who was the edge that just left us for the Raiders?
Kyler Fackrell.
I think there's like a guy that can be sort of like a Kyler Fackrell. He could be your edge 3, edge 4 kind of guy. I don't think they're going to get a vet edge because they're only going to roster 4 edge players anyway, and 2 of them are Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. So I don't think there's a lot of role and opportunity for a veteran edge to come here. And I also don't think the Chargers have a lot of utility for it. So I think that's probably a draft concern at this point.
Tyler, you mentioned maybe you could see one more free agency move happen for the Chargers. Throw a couple names out there that you think might be pretty popular and reasonable.
I would have said Sony Michel, but then Staley came out and said that we looked at the running back market and we're not all for that. We couldn't find the value there, so not him. Because of it's the easy answer, but I got to take it because the Chargers just have operated like this. Staley admittedly said that they want guys that they know, like they want to spend. If they want to spend money on guys, they want to spend on a known commodity, and that's kind of what they did with Khalil Mack. That's what they did with Sebastian Joseph Day. So easy answer, but Riley Reif is the one with some connections to the team, or at least to some of the coaches. And so I think that guy, or in a very loose way, Dennis Kelly. I keep saying those two names because those are kind of the two connections that I think are left at this point. I wouldn't rule out Kareem Jackson as well. I don't think he's signed yet. Alex, has he?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, so I'll go with some of those. Arjun, stop saying names that don't make sense. Arjun, I'm going to fire you from our analytics segment.
I mean, I guess the only one that I can think of that's like a real connections kind of player is someone we talked about earlier in free agency. It's probably Akeem Hicks. I don't think they have a ton of utility for that anymore because they already got Austin Johnson and Sebastian Joseph Day. But if you're just kind of looking for a connections guy whose value might be a little lower at this point in free agency than we thought it would be at the beginning, then that's sort of the name that I would think of. I do like Arjun. Honestly, people are going to hate me for saying this. Arjun, I don't mind you saying Melvin Gordon. They need a running back too. Trey Turner, pass though.
All right. Justin says, If the Chargers go right tackle or something else, what are some third round wide receivers you guys would target in the draft?
Alex, go for it. This is your thing.
I mean, yeah, I would love to go for someone like Sky Moore. There's been talk of someone like Bo Melton in the third round as well. I really, once you get to like the third round guys, I think it's all about kind of finding some speed and finesse to put in between Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. You're not going to go get like a Jameson Williams in the first round in this scenario, or like a real complete receiver like Chris Olave. So I think it's just someone who can fill in those roles. Yeah, but I definitely think the third round receiver talent in this draft is, not to crap on Josh Palmer. I mean, I think he's good, but the third round draft talent in this class to me is like higher than the level it was last year. I thought last year's wide receiver class was very like top heavy with Devonta Smith and Jamar Chase and Waddle and all those guys at the top, versus I think this is a little bit more spread out. So I definitely think just in general, they can go get some third round guys that, would help them.
Yeah, it's so hard to judge. Last year I think I loved De'Ami Brown, and so did Steven. We're like, yeah, second round target sounds good. And I think he went fourth, fifth round. Guys like Des Fitzpatrick I liked. He got drafted and was cut immediately. It's so hard to tell in the third round who's really going to be there. I'm going to circle back to Bo Melton though, because I haven't watched him, but I'm going to assume, Alex, that you've watched him. Am I correct? You've watched Rutgers, Bo Melton?
Yeah, I've watched too much Rutgers football. But yeah, no, I mean, he was one of the reasons that I was very excited he got an invite to the Senior Bowl, because I was like, he's probably a guy that would go 6th, 7th round undrafted if he hadn't, and now he's kind of shooting up the boards. But he just has that quick twitch to his game, can kind of run every route you ask him to. I think his physical profile is why he's not going to ultimately go like really high like someone like Christian Watson will. But
Sure.
To me, I still think he's going to be, one of the top. Interesting if he's going to be one of the top 10 receivers taken. Probably somewhere between that 10 to 15 range, though. And I think he could go higher.
Do you remember?
I actually don't remember his combine off the top of my head. Give me a second to look that up. But I mean, obviously his big testing thing was the Senior Bowl and doing that. And yeah, I don't have his RAS off the top of my head, though.
Yeah, I know Brett Coleman, EJ Snyder, those guys are talking about Bo Melton as one of the best of like the second tier. They have, I don't know exactly what their grouping is. I think of the second or third tier, they had Olave at the top, of course, but then they're talking about Sky Moore and Calvin Austin and Bo Melton all together. Yeah. I haven't watched Sky Moore. I haven't watched Bo Melton, so I couldn't tell you if that's reasonable or not. But
so Bo Melton has a lot of green on his chart. I just looked at it right now. But he ran a 4.34 40. Which is, pretty crazy speed there. Has all green in terms of the speed categories, but, kind of got dinged with the height and weight at the beginning, but scored a 9.21 RAS score.
Cool.
All right. Frank Blakely, thank you so much for your support. He wants to know, do you think all our 10 draft picks make the team? Lots of depth needs, but do you guys see that happening?
I don't see them making all 10 picks. I still think there's probably going to be a point where they decide to trade up the draft. This could be in a later round. I mean, if you have like 3 7th round picks, you can figure out a way to package that and move up in the 5th round if you want, or something like that. But I don't think they end up signing all 10 players, and they could still move in free agency. I don't actually know what the total number of players they have rostered is right now. I would assume
they have a pretty full roster. I think the assumption for when they calculate like cap space needed for draft picks is that the 10 picks will replace the 10 guys on the roster or whatever, or just a spot that's not been filled yet. So
right, yeah.
We need Arjun. Tell me about cap stuff. Don't ask me about that.
Yeah, I don't think they end up making all 10 picks just because of the kind of guys they signed and the free agency that they did. But it's always possible that they do go make 10 draft picks. As far as like what's the idea that like one of them is cut in training camp or something, I think that's possible when you have 3 7th round picks and you have plus you have to consider the undrafted free agency guys, and I think there's a decently high chance at least one of those guys makes the team, which has kind of been a Chargers tradition. So I don't think all 10 draft picks make the team, and I don't know if they end up making all 10 picks anyway.
it's just so hard to judge what they'll do because those round 7 picks are all worth like 1 point each, and there's just no trade value. And I talked about, oh, back to my PowerPoint. Wow, look at that. The compensatory picks that they got, they're only worth 7.2 combined, which doesn't really, like, their 5th round pick is worth 25. Yeah. So it's barely worth a compensatory 6th to take all those compensatory picks and move up. So I don't buy the. I just feel like the pick itself and not owning a player, that's what I'm looking for. Having a player on your roster is worth more than the trade value of the pick itself. So I think they do make all their picks. I don't know if they move up because they have a lot of picks, but they don't really have a lot of ammo to move up. Like, it's a low caliber bullet. It's not really, they're not doing anything with it. So I think they keep all their picks. Whether they make it or not, or whether they all make the team or not, is a whole nother story. I didn't think they would all make it last year, and they did. They had 8. Although one was a 3rd round pick, compensatory pick.
I think so.
10.
Your PowerPoint has come in pretty handy today, Tyler.
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you. Should make more of these.
All right. Wrong Speedy says, without a 2nd round pick, are we completely out of the Calvin Austin sweepstakes?
Probably at this point, unless they want to trade up into the 2nd round. But yeah, I don't know if they are going to want to sacrifice their capital that's one of those situations where you have 10 picks and you can trade up. But yeah, I would say how Calvin Austin tested probably takes him out of that 2nd round range.
Yeah, it just depends on how the league views him. It depends how the league views him and then the class around him. So if it's like, well, I can get a more prototypical wide receiver sized guy, like let's say Bo Melton, Sky Moore, Khalil Shakir, or whatever you want later on, then they could pass on Calvin Austin for a more known. Calvin Austin's 2 inches shorter than me. I ain't playing in the NFL anytime soon. Now, I also don't run a 4.3, unfortunately, more like a 4.4. No, I'm kidding. But I think the Chargers are out of it because I think Calvin Austin will get to the 3rd round. I just don't think they'll get to their point in the 3rd round. I think someone is going to bet on that upside and make sure they get it before they end day 2.
Yeah, and I think the Tyreek Hill thing is so big too, just because there are GMs that are going to convince themselves, rightly or wrongly, in the end of the day, that he is their Tyreek Hill. He is their weapon, and I think that's just such an attractive thing to have as a GM. So I think his stock could go up even further than it is now, just because of people talking themselves into him because of how he tested.
Yeah, I would say the Chargers are most likely out of the Calvin Austin sweepstakes, but anything could happen. Crazy things happen.
Yep.
All right. Jason says, what edge options do we still have?
We're just talking about free agency here.
Let's start with free agency and then move into the draft.
Okay. I mean, Trey Flowers is kind of the guy if they wanted to do that. There's not a whole lot left for them. I sort of brought up Carl Nassib as a guy that I think could be interesting if they just wanted to put him in like that Kyler Fackrell role, and just roll with him as like edge 3. But if you're looking for a guy who's going to be like potentially an edge 2, like if Khalil Mack goes down or something like that, I don't think there's a whole lot left for them at this point. It's a lot of older guys just currently on the market who are looking to find things, and because of the lack of like pass rush productivity, for example, I don't think that Brandon Staley would have any interest in someone like Jadeveon Clowney. Don't think they're going to get a Melvin Ingram back. I think you're really looking at a rotational piece at this point. Morgan Fox would be kind of interesting if they want to do that, although he's been playing more of the interior but can play edge as well. But yeah, I think really when you're looking at edge, it's someone who's going to be an edge 3, just purely rotational option at this point. I don't think they're going to go for someone who's going to be like a high impact free agency guy.
Yeah, I think Kavino mentioned Morgan Fox yesterday. So I don't know much about him, but if he wants a guy who can kind of reduce more inside and maybe open up something else, that's great. I know Stevens mentioned Takk McKinley over and over again. I've not watched him. Couldn't tell you about him.
Yeah, problem with Takk McKinley is he tore his Achilles in like December, though.
That's right. I thought that was the other guy who tore his Achilles.
No, that was McKinley, because I brought that up to Steven in the chat, and he's like, oh, I just found out he tore his Achilles yesterday because no one was watching the Falcons or whatever. I think Takk McKinley's probably done, or he could be back just before it starts season, but I don't think they'd take that chance.
Guys, do we think that Hicks is still an option for the Chargers?
No, unless they somehow think he's a a backup rotational guy, which they don't. I think Akeem Hicks is a starter at this point. If there's an injury and then they want to sign Akeem Hicks during the season, if he's not signed, sure. But they're going to force the issue with Jerry Tillery. We know with Kenneth Murray, Jerry Tillery, really all their first rounders, they're going to force the issue with those guys, whether we like it or not. So Jerry Tillery is going to start. Sebastian Joseph Day is going to start. Austin Johnson was paid way too much money to not start. So those three are your starters along the interior. I don't think Akeem Hicks is an option for them unless someone gets hurt, or it's a complete dramatic change with how they feel about Jerry Tillery, which I don't buy happening anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't buy that happening either. I think Akeem Hicks is probably off the board now because of primarily the Austin Johnson signing, like Tyler mentioned. Anything's possible, and he does have those connections, but at this point, I feel like he's a little bit redundant in terms of what they would want to do. I think the only kind of like free agent tackle they would go for, or like interior guy, would be like the option that they potentially had in like Fletcher Cox. So like, okay, well, we just can't pass up this value that's being thrown at us if they were to have pursued that at the time. But I think Akeem Hicks, I don't think the NFL views him as a backup, but he's going to be signed late anyway, so he'll probably have at least one or two more starting seasons. So I think that takes him out of the Chargers' potential, unless his value just really has cratered.
Tyler mentioned possibly signing Hicks later on in the season if he's still available, but do you guys think that he actually will be available during the season?
No.
Who do you think pick him up?
Yeah, I don't know if there's like a specific team, but I just think he's probably going to be in that like second wave of free agency, potentially like after the draft, where teams just go, hey, we haven't filled the defensive tackle. We still need somebody there. I still think he's going to probably start for another year or two. So for me, it's in theory possible. But yeah, no, I think his value, and also I don't think he would go into the season unsigned if he doesn't get a starting role. I think, if anything, he would take some kind of backup role or contract somewhere if he can't get that starting job, whether that's with the Chargers or not.
Yeah, I don't think he's available during the season unless there's something we don't know about, and this is a medical thing that we don't know about, which is possible. I don't think he's an option during the season, but after the draft, maybe.
James C. in the chat says, does a Derwin James extension lower his cap hit this year?
Arjun, if you're listening, can you answer that question? I'm going to say yes, but
I actually don't think so. I'm 50-50 on this one, though, but I think it's because he's on the 5th-year option. It doesn't actually... I think if he was on his rookie deal or something like that, it would. But I think... I think really the Derwin James contract extension would be if you give him like a 4 or 5 year deal, you lower the cap hit in the first 2 years and stuff like that. I don't think it does it this year. I could be wrong on that, though.
Okay, well, y'all will have to double check with Arjun on that because we are not positive. All right, Wrong Speedy says, over or under Chargers winning the division outright with Hill out of the picture?
If you give me a percentage, maybe I can give you the over, like whether I take over or under. But like if I'm just saying yes or no, I'll say yes because hello, a Chargers fan. I think it'll happen. I actually think they can beat the Chiefs. I do think they can win the division. I don't know, man. I've seen this team too many times, and who knows.
I mean, I think they're definitely in a better position now with the Tyreek Hill thing. I just think the Chiefs kind of will still be the Chiefs. I don't think they'll be quite the same team in terms of what they are in the playoffs. But at the end of the day, you have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and I still am kind of going to bet on that in addition to Travis Kelce. If their defense does take a dip, though, and they don't have Tyreek Hill to bail them out, then I think it could potentially get like ugly for the Chiefs in terms of like being a second, maybe third place team in this division. But I don't think it's the time yet. Plus you have to consider the, improvements that the Broncos and the Raiders have made. So I wouldn't bet on it. I would probably go under.
Yeah, I think that the race for the AFC West is going to be a lot tighter, but you brought up a good point with the additions that the other teams are making. Competition is still going to be there. It's going to be
Mhm.
tight. Okay, moving on. Johan says that he wouldn't add another free agent until the draft passes. Let's imagine that Stingley falls and he's there at 17. Would you take him?
No, because I don't need a CB5 to be a first rounder.
Right. That gets you into what, like, yeah, that's tough. I think if you sign Gilmore, that probably takes you out of the cornerback conversation, just because at that point you would have had signed JC Jackson and Stephon Gilmore. But also depends on the length of what the contract they give Gilmore is, because I would assume it would probably be like a somewhere between a 1 and 3 year deal as opposed to like something super long term. So I mean, you could make the case that, like, well, I mean, hey, they just gave these contracts to Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and we're still talking about wide receiver all day. So, you know, in theory, why can't you do the same for corner? I wouldn't take Stingley because personally, while I like his skill set, I am very concerned about his health. And he is sort of the Caleb Farley for me of the draft this year. While I do see the upside and the tape from 2019, I don't think you can bet on it with the concerns that are out there.
Jason A says, doesn't Max restructure guarantee another free agent signing? Well, I'm going to say nothing is absolutely guaranteed in this world right now.
No, well, another free agent signing, sure. Like I think it does guarantee another free agent signing, but if you mean to the level that I think you're implying, no, I actually just think it means 3 more guys for $2 million. I think they need to find some depth, and I think they will. You know, Christian Covington was signed in August last year. You know, they're going to do all that sort of stuff. So I think it guarantees a free agent signing because it could be a $950,000 player. But I don't think it's going to be to the level that everyone's expecting.
No, I don't think it's going to be to the level everyone's expecting either, unless the value of like a Matthew or Gilmore goes way down past what we're expecting. But yeah, I think they will still take advantage of the second wave of free agency, and there's guys they can go get. But I don't think Khalil Mack's guaranteed another signing. Although, you know, it gave them some maneuverability if something does become kind of open.
All right. Desato says, is a trade for Sequon Barkley at all possible or reasonable?
It's possible and reasonable, but also dumb, so you shouldn't want it to happen.
How is it reasonable and dumb? I mean, that's like me, but like, why is this not?
It's reasonable in the sense that they need another running back. I don't think it makes sense for that person to be Saquon Barkley, given his health concerns, and you know the injuries that have racked up. I sort of did a video on Bradbury and Barkley before, but Barkley's, I mean, numbers in terms of the analytics have really taken a dip in terms of his explosiveness. He still is like able to be the guy that like, okay, I mean, like he's going to go, you know, 5 yards. And I just don't think he deals with contact very well at this point. That was pretty evident. And I think his speed's a lot slower. I wouldn't really like a trade for Saquon Barkley at all, unless the Giants are just fire selling and are like, hey, here's like a 6th-round pick. Like, here's Saquon Barkley. Sure, I'll take that in that case. But I think for the value they expect in a Saquon return, I think it's too risky. And he only has 1 year left on his deal anyway. So, you know, you're kind of leveraging a pretty high pick either this year or next year for a running back who's been injured and has lost a lot of his explosiveness, and you're making a bet that he's going to gain it back all in 1 year. And even if he does gain that explosiveness back, then you're talking about him probably pricing himself out of the team and then moving on next year. So like, I just don't think it makes a ton of sense as a rental, even with the concerns.
Side note, the chat has me laughing on the inside right now. Frank hasn't seen Tyler's mom super chat yet, so he wants to make sure he's got money for lunch.
Aww.
Very caring guy. Appreciate
Thank you,
it, Frank.
Thank you, Frank.
And
it's
then
very nice
we did get the Mama Shun chat though.
Yes,
right
we
after
did.
Frank.
Thank you for the shout out.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Hi, Mom. Yeah, thank you, Frank, for the money for my lunch money. You know, things are getting expensive here in California, of course. You know, I like rice. It's pretty cheap, but I can't keep eating that for the rest of my life. So your $5 really helps. And then Mom, thank you for the super chat as well, as always.
$5. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the cost of ramen packets in California, but it's enough for them.
Yeah,
I'd
we
be
hit
okay with
inflation.
that.
It's now $1.05. So
Yeah.
now it's really expensive.
That's like the $1.25 store. Yeah.
Might not be enough in a couple weeks, but we'll
Yeah,
see.
no kidding.
Oof.
Again, we appreciate y'all's support. Thanks so much. Vince wants to know who's our kick return specialist this year.
I feel like ironically and unironically, Larry Roundtree is somehow the answer to that question in the
Oh
end.
God. Oh
But like,
God.
tell me
Oh,
I'm not
God.
wrong, Alex, that wouldn't happen. Like, let's justify keeping one of these or both running backs on the roster. So I could see that. I don't think they'll do that. They've had interest in who was it, Alex Carter?
DeAndre Carter. Yeah.
Who dat?
The wide receiver from Washington. He was their kick return specialist. So no, I mean, he's an interesting guy just in terms of speed. I still think, I mean, we haven't heard a lot about Andre Roberts at this point, and it seems like he's kind of going to be one of those second wave of free agency guys as well for those that don't find their kick return specialist in the next few weeks of the draft. I'd still bet on it being Andre Roberts, although the Ryan Ficken special teams, coordinator stuff could just want to clean house in general. And it's worth pointing out, I forget his name, but he did find a running back in last year's draft off the top of my head, and he was their main kick returner for Minnesota. So maybe they really do think that the draft is kind of their key there. But I'd still bet on it being Andre Roberts for now, especially because his value hasn't been super high.
That's who I'd bet on too. What do you make of? Oh my God, what was I about to ask? Well, never mind. There goes my brain fart.
What do I make of Roundtree being the kick return specialist? I don't make it. Please.
Sure. What do you make of that, Alex? Let's hear your answer. I'm sure it's
No. I saw it for like 3 games last year, and
I
I was done with that experiment.
Yeah, we tried that. Okay, so everyone's asking about Joe Reed. Do you think this new regime or the new special teams group that is can get him to go at least try out for returner? Because we again, a fan versus coaching or an organization thing, we think he can do it. We thought he could do it, and then I went to the first day of training camp, and we all saw Reed wasn't even involved with returning the football. So, do you think that they could get the most out of him and try that this year, or do you think he's kind of a lost cause?
I think he's kind of a training camp body at this point, especially because he wasn't drafted by this current administration. I think that sort of leaves him being the odd man out. I really wish he wasn't injured last year, so then we could have seen, something from him. But I think they've all but kind of written him off at this point. Yeah, I don't see much of a Joe Reed resurgence coming.
Who are you guys valuing more, Elam, McDuffie, or Booth from Clinton Sims?
Who do I think Telesco value more between Elon McDuffie and Booth? I will say I think they have a couple people on their defensive coaching staff that have connections to Washington, so it's possible that that's someone that they would value, I guess, more, want more. Oh, so they have. Never mind. So Shane Davis, assistant offensive line coach at Washington, but that was before them. Oh, John Timu, that's who it is. John Timu was the grad assistant for Washington for the last 2 seasons before this one, so 2019, 2020. So there's something. I'm just saying, like the Chargers really value connections, and so I think that's possible. Kai Earlam went to some school, some Florida school. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, some Gator Nation school. I am a Florida grad, so I am a little biased there.
Yeah. Who would they value more? I haven't watched McDuffie all the way through, so I couldn't really tell you.
Yeah, I mean, I think out of this group, it's probably McDuffie, just because I think he's kind of the most versatile, because he can play in the slot, he can play in safety sometimes, he can play just straight up man corner. They do value. I wonder how they view the Asante Samuel Jr. thing, though, because if you have Asante Samuel Jr. and then McDuffie, who's also kind of lacking size, I wonder if they think that kind of makes them a little bit liable on defense. Booth is very scheme diverse too, though, so I would say out of that group, I'd probably go for who Telesco and Staley would want, probably 1 McDuffie, 2 Booth, 3 Elam.
All right, I'm guessing this is Tyler's dad.
It
Maybe?
is Tyler's dad.
Shout out to Tyler's parents today. They don't want
Yeah.
you to go hungry, buddy.
I appreciate it. I wish I would go hungry. I'd lose some weight. So if you could stop sending me money so I could lose some weight, that'd be great. Maybe a ramen diet would do some good for me.
Maybe so. It might not be good for your sodium intake though. So
That's fine. I don't need to see 90, honestly. The Chargers will kill me before that.
Aw. Okay, Thomas Martinez says, who do you think wins the battle between Kelly and Roundtree, assuming they draft RB2 and don't keep both?
We all lose. That's the answer.
Yeah, Alex, I just want you to answer this one. I want you to take full. Go for it.
I mean, I think Joshua Kelly is the better running back at this point, but I mean, I think that he was just so like meh last year, in addition to like the fumble concerns and stuff from before. I think probably given this coaching staff Roundtree and the belief that they've shown in him at points, but I really don't know if they have a lot of confidence in either of them because they kind of alternated healthy scratches last year based on what the matchup was. So I guess I would lean towards Roundtree because this administration drafted him, but I don't feel very strongly about that at all. And at this point, if I had to pick, I would pick Joshua Kelly, but that's also like just asking me which finger would I like to slice off. I mean, both of these are loser running back 2 situations.
Maddie, what was it like watching? I don't know if you watched Florida, but what was it like watching Dameon Pierce? Because Steven's a huge fan of Pierce, and I know you talked to Sequon about him a little bit. So what's kind of the sentiment on him?
Well, first off, of course, I watched Florida Gator football. It wasn't very pretty last season, but I did watch. Dameon Pierce, he's a baller, and Sequon was very high on him, and I am as well. I've personally talked to him before. Great guy, great player. I'm obviously not a first rounder, but he's going to land somewhere, and he's going to be an asset to a team.
Yeah, awesome. I know Steven said that somebody said to him that the Chargers are interested in Peters. They like him.
Yeah.
Who, what? I don't know. Nobody ever told me that, but sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dameon Pierce would be interesting. This sort of goes what Steven was saying when we did our running back rankings of like, well, maybe the Chargers don't like need a bruiser, but at this point they just need talent. I mean, in the running back room behind Austin Eckler, and I don't think it really matters if you go get a more bruiser type, more finesse runner type. At this point, I just think they need someone to kind of carry the load behind Austin Eckler. And I think given the nature of this question, it can't really be Kelly or Roundtree. So whether you want to take Dameon Pierce or Tyler's 14th favorite running back, Jerome Ford, either of those would be up for
Sorry. I'll go watch more, Alex. I apologize. I'll see if I can. Okay, I do want to have like a tiebreaker question. I want to hijack the chat for once. Team Ariza, let's say the Chargers need a punter. Maddie, you're going to just set this for everybody. What is the round you should take a punter like Ariza? What is the highest you should take one? This is a huge question.
The pressure's on.
Pressure's on.
I think whenever you take a punter in the draft, you're probably going to get some flack. Highest round, but they're important. They are important. They can be game changers. So punters are people too, like the saying goes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say the highest you should take one. The absolute highest is probably 5th round, but to me that's pretty high still.
Okay, that's a good answer. I think everyone would appreciate that answer.
That's a good answer, but Steven's coming back in this show right now.
Oh gosh.
After he left
family.
Steven doesn't believe that punters are people. You should take them in the 9th round.
They're people too, whether we like to admit it or not.
They're just invaluable. Oh, mom! Wow. Oh. I think my mom sent in a super chat just to beat my dad.
Okay.
For super chat money sent in. Yeah, cool. Have at it, guys. I went to dinner last night with my fiance, so if you want to just pay for it at this point, go for it. I'm more than happy to have that bill paid for at this point.
I can pay for my drinks at the bar. But
no, Alex. We drink water here.
Yeah. Okay.
No, wait. I did a Coors Light sponsorship for Blue Wire. So, yeah. If you ever liked the cold taste of
the
Coors
Coors
Light,
Light.
When the mountains turn blue, you know your beer's cold. So make sure you go get your Coors Light. Please drink responsibly.
If the mango shot of Absolute vodka that I drank last night would like to sponsor this show, I would appreciate it.
That sounds disgusting.
Yeah,
We
so
have
what is it? What gross drink did you have?
No, they had these like flavored shots. So they had like a raspberry one, they had a mango one, and I just kind of lost track at a certain point. But there was a vanilla one. Oh man.
Jeez, Alex.
Yeah, I got home at like 5:30 last night. So, we're sort of rebounding the show today.
There's a lot of competition in the chat with your parents there, Tyler.
Oh my god.
So
we got
there's new
another one from your mom too. Thanks for the super sticker. Appreciate it.
So
I think you're gonna be able to afford more than ramen now, Tyler.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have like udon or something now. Like I'll go out and get some like udon or pho or whatever. So my mom hit the game-winning field goal. I think she pulled off the improbable, hit that game-winning field goal at the end of regulation or in overtime. And I think she wins. So mom and dad, thank you. Dad, good effort, but you pulled the Chargers. A lot of good effort, but you lost in the end.
I'm happy Tyler's parents support his endeavors, unlike mine.
Do your parents know you have a podcast, Alex?
My mom knows about it. I don't know if she's super supportive of it, but she understands.
Right on.
But yeah.
All right. I am trying to find a good question for us. I saw earlier, can't seem to find it now, but the people want to know what nickname we're giving Justin Herbert.
There's
Any
no
ideas?
nickname. There's no nickname. His name's just Justin. Herbie, it all sounds lame. I'm sorry. Just call him by his name. Like this is like when people tried to give a name to Philip Rivers. I'm like, his name's just Philip Rivers. I did like Felipe Rios, but that was all right. Other than that, though, no, I don't really like nicknames for either of them.
Yeah, some people call him like I'll go with like Rainbow Sherbert because like he's throwing rainbows. That's awful. But whatever. If you're asking me to do something, but yeah, Justin Herbert, I like. If you're like Benjamin Albright, your nickname for him is Alcoholic.
Oh, Jesus.
So that could be one. So you can call him like Jaeger Bomb if you want when he's throwing bombs. Yeah, that's a whole other story.
Are you still blocked from Albright's Twitter?
Oh yeah. Because I dared question why he would say that Herbert was a drinker.
He never blocked me, even though I came for him. I don't know why, but we were caught in the crossfire there. And Tyler's mom has clarified that she will adopt me.
No.
Okay, guys. Supercharger 2197 wants to know: can Tillery be the answer at Edge 3?
Alex on 3. 1, 2, 3. No.
No. Like the Tillery at Edge thing was kind of like fun in 2020 because people were like, "Oh, could he do it?" And then no, like the Raiders game in 2020 was like one of the worst things I've ever seen. He got like one sack on Derek Carr, and then they just let Devontae Booker run for 500 yards because Jerry Tillery was on the edge, and they just kept running at him every play. No, Tillery can't be the answer at Edge 3. Kenneth Murray is not the answer at Edge 3, even though maybe they think he is. Please just find actual edge players to play edge instead of just trying to retrofit guys to do it. I just also don't think Tillery and Murray have like that high end like athleticism that Brandon Staley wants in his edges on this team. But yeah, no, I think Tillery's situational role for now is probably the best case scenario for him if they want to break him out. I don't think he's the answer at Edge 3 at all.
All right. What are our thoughts on Penning? According to Joban, excuse my pronunciation there, not the best. Penning had 16 penalties last year against some weak competition. Do we think that's a player that the Chargers are still going to want?
I mean, as soon as I watched him, not that the stats always mean everything, but you watch a guy get 16 penalties playing for Northern Iowa, and it's like, that's really not. That's only, I guess, one penalty a game if you go to the NFL or whatever. But I worry about that because watching them, it wasn't just like a false start or holding as much as like wrapping his arm, holding, but arms around his guy's neck, illegal blocks. he's a guy that I don't want to say he plays dirty, but he's a player that the refs could classify sort of as a dirty player because of how he knocks guys in the back, or when the play's not even going towards them, he's just kind of violent in that way. I don't know. This is why I'm not sold on him at 17. I think the Chargers could take him at 17, but those penalties against weak competition and him getting schooled by like Ioma Uwazurike, who's like a 5th round, 4th round pick at this point, he got beat by him pretty good, and I definitely have my concerns.
Yeah, I have my concerns as well. I do still think they would want him because of the prospect he has and the raw tools that he has there to be able to develop into a, basically starting, star tackle on this team. But it's interesting because I think our discussion is centered because of Rashawn Slater last year a little bit, who was one of the most like pro-ready tackle prospects that we had seen in like a number of years. And now we're kind of like, well, Penning or potentially other players, but none of those guys are as ready or as good as Sewell and Slater were last year. So I think you sort of have to temper your expectations a little bit. If you're expecting one of those kinds of players, Penning is not that yet. But I also don't think he necessarily needs to be out the gate. And, Staley's also been of the mindset that you can coach out tendencies as well.
Thank you, Giovanni, for the pronunciation and the question. We appreciate it. I will get it right next time. Okay, Justin, aka So Light, thank you for the donation. Who would be a better draft pick, Jameson Williams, Penning, or Olave? I'm going to go Williams here. What are you guys thinking?
I agree. I would go with Jameson Williams. As long as everything's cleared, of course, I would go with Jameson Williams.
Yeah, I'd say if everything's cleared medically, probably Williams. Although, if you want to be kind of risk averse, like I do think that Olave is a good substitute in the sense that he's one of the best route runners in this class as well. Doesn't have quite that top end athleticism that Jameson Williams does, but if you wanted to be a little bit risk averse, I think that you can make the argument that's the better draft pick considering the health history of Jameson Williams, but he's still young as well. So I would lean Jameson here too.
Does Kyle Hamilton make sense for us if he's there at 17? If he's there at 17, I will be shocked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't buy the talk of him falling as much. I mean, it's certainly possible, but I think it's more just like I said earlier, other teams trying to get him to fall to 17 or other teams trying to get him to fall to where they are in the draft. But I still think at the end of the day, he's going to be a top 10 player. Does he make sense? I mean, yeah, like at that point, he would be best player available, although I guess it kind of depends on what they want to do with Derwin James as well, because I think you could kind of make it a little bit complicated if you have like both of those players playing the same role, although you can do some more interesting stuff and move Kyle Hamilton around the defense like he was used in college in that sort of Isaiah Simmons type of way. So I would say, yeah, he makes sense if he's there, but I don't buy that he's going to be there.
Matt Nicholson. Go ahead.
He makes sense to be there. Am I way behind?
You just cut out there, but I think you said he makes sense, but he won't be there, right?
Yes.
Okay. Matt Nicholson says that because of the affinity with Georgia players, could that lead them to draft Dean at number 17?
That does have a nice ring to it.
Yeah. It's possible. I mean, we haven't talked about linebacker a lot. Just because, I mean, this is the previous administration with Lynn and Telesco obviously took Kenneth Murray in the first round. It's possible. I still think that they want to see what they have in Kenneth Murray. They want to see kind of what they have in this group in general. And I don't see them spending another first round pick on that one. But if they decide that they're out on Kenneth Murray, then I think it's certainly possible that they go for Nakobe Dean or Devin Lloyd type player if they're there. But yeah, no, I think this goes back to the whole valuing linebackers thing. It's not so much that they let Kaiser walk because they thought he was I mean, they did let Kaiser walk because they thought he was replaceable, but I don't think they're going to replace him with some top tier talent, right? Like as Steven has talked about how like Troy Reader was the best linebacker on the Rams when Staley was there, or even last year, like it was someone like Kaiser White, who prior to last year was not this like big name player, and the league still doesn't value him as a big name player, as evidenced kind of by the Eagles contract that he got. So I don't see them replacing Kaiser with a first round pick.
Yeah, I don't think that would ever happen with this regime because it's Georgia. Like, I think we do. Like, if Nakobe Dean didn't go to Georgia, I think we wouldn't really consider it as much. But Staley seems to have this. He's drafted Georgia players, seems to think highly of them. He just did a talk there, which doesn't always mean anything, but that seems to be kind of potentially the new Notre Dame for this regime, whereas Telesco always went to those Notre Dame guys. I think there are guys later on in the draft. I haven't gone through all those later guys, but we're going to do that episode tomorrow. And there's a lot of inside guys that do their roles were just to attack the line of scrimmage. Like if you just told them to blitz every time, and that was kind of their role, not really, but that's kind of what it seemed like. Not even as much processing as much as shoot the gap, attack the line of scrimmage, attack the quarterback. And I think Staley would find someone because there's 25 linebackers in this class with an RAS score over 9. Like there's so many guys you can find later on that are very athletic, very fast, who can just do what Staley wants. And if Kenneth Murray's the dime linebacker anyway, I think for the most part, they're just going to find a guy day 3.
All right, y'all, we are about out of time, but I do want to give a quick shout out to NB Talent. He's been pretty active in the chat today. We appreciate all your support. Apparently, he wants to know my all-time favorite Charger and also the Chargers color scheme. Not sure.
I think he means your favorite Chargers color scheme out of their current ones.
Okay. I like the blue and yellow. It's bright, it's happy, it's cheerful, it's positive. When it comes to all-time favorite Charger, I think I'm going to go Antonio Gates here. He played basketball in college, and he was the underdog, an undrafted free agent, and then went on to have the career that he did. Pretty impressive. I'm going to choose the underdog here. What are y'all's all-time favorites?
It's impossible for me not to say Phillip Rivers. I mean, I just feel like he was such a part of my childhood, was there for everything. And I can't say anything other than him. Obviously, LT is an answer here too. But I feel like he was kind of there for a shorter amount of time, at his peak. So I would say because of longevity and because of how long he was here and what he meant to the team, Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, I'll go with Phillip Rivers as well. Kind of boring answer, but it's like I was born in 95 and I grew up with Phillip Rivers. Like when we started playing football or liking football, Phillip Rivers was the quarterback of my favorite team. So definitely him.
Good choices, but Frank says that he will see about getting Antonio on the pod.
Please.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, if you want to just not send me $5 super chats and get Antonio Gates on the pod instead, that's completely fine, Frank.
Yes.
All right, guys, we're about out of time. That was a lot of fun. I just want to say thanks to all the Chargers fans for tuning in this Saturday morning. And thanks for welcoming me to the GAC squad. Happy to be here, guys. Yeah. All right, we are signing off.